I'd like to introduce beautiful little dancing crow, Dr. Deborah Francis. She's a naturopathic physician, an herbalist, a visionary, and a ceremonial person. Thank you.
In 1999, I was asked to go and grab my sacred ceremonial pipe, which is a pipe held by the Lakota people, and I'm part Lakota, so I carry one of those pipes. And I was asked to go sit under the cedar trees. And I sat under the trees, and as I began to pray with the pipe, Spirit said to me, in these times that are to come, it is absolutely critical to dream the good dream. Absolutely critical. I had no idea. I knew we were coming into difficult times, you know, with the changing of the millennium and all the prophecies and the Mayan prophecy and lots of different prophecies foretelling that our culture was, our way of being and the whole old way of being was going to fall apart. That's a good thing. I had no idea how hard it was going to be to live through. I knew there were going to be global changes. We all knew that. Anyone who was environmentally sensitive or environmentally aware knew that back then, but I don't think any of us had any idea, including the scientists, had no idea how hard and fast this was going to happen, the global warming and the climate changes. So I had no idea how hard dreaming the good dream was going to be in these times. And yet, we have to still dream the good dream. We have to focus on planting seeds of beauty for future generations. One of the Mayan elders who spoke to us in 2011 was talking about the Mayan prophecy. And he said that the Mayan people are happy. They didn't like the old order, the indigenous people. And so they're happy. And yes, it's painful, the degradation and the falling apart of the old culture. And sometimes things get worse before they get better. Dr. Jung said that for something to be healed, it must be lived out to its fullest. And so we're seeing all the dysfunction in the culture being lived out to its fullest. And that's a good thing, because eventually it's going to collapse in on itself. If you go far enough in any direction, it goes to its opposite. And that's just what we're heading. And that's the great thing about the cycles of life. You know, if you go far enough in the west, you end up in the east. Because everything's round. And so we're in a cycle. And it's certainly a hard time to be alive. But one of the other things that Mayan elder told us, and another Mayan elder as well, said, the important thing to do right now is to plant seeds. And so, in whatever way we can, we plant seeds with prayer for future generations. And no matter how dire it looks, we must believe in miracles. We must work for change politically and socially, and in whatever way that is appropriate for us to do. We must pray our hearts out, and we must never give up hope. At the same time, we must honor our despair. We must honor our fear. We must honor our grief. We must honor the darkness. Because if we don't, then we're invalidating ourselves. We're not having compassion. We have to have compassion for ourselves and each other, for the despair that we do feel that's part of it. And to do our best to bring healing to that despair, but never to give in to it. But always, no matter how we feel or how dire it looks, to stand up one more time and plant one more seed of hope and beauty. The other thing about the prophecies, there are lots of prophecies about these times. There's a generations-long prophecy carried on in Native America that said that the rivers would run with poison. A time would come when the rivers would run with poison. The food would be poisoned. The earth herself would be poisoned. The air we breathe would be poisoned. Do you think we're in those times? Chances are the prophecy is manifesting. The thing that I take comfort in knowing that, is that it is a prophecy. There's some kind of divine plan. And so, again, I go back to what so many saints and sages have said. Mother Teresa, I understand, has said this, and so many saints and sages throughout the millennia, but especially in these times. You know, our answer is prayer. We're not going to solve this problem ourselves. It's way bigger than we are. And the gift of this time, is that it pushes us to reach out to Spirit. It pushes us to reach to Spirit, because only a miracle will pull us out of this. And there are people, small people, creating big miracles and little miracles everywhere. And I remember there's a quote from Margaret Mead who said, Never underestimate the power of simple people, small people. Because in fact, it's only small people doing little things that has ever changed anything. So, you know, if big governments change and they make a difference for us, it's only going to be because the little people have created such an uproar and have said no so many times or said yes to this. And the change will come. The other thing about the prophecy that's very hopeful is that there's a prophecy, I understand in China, and I know from Native America, there's a prophecy promising the return of the feminine. And we're seeing that. We're seeing feelings being honored. We're seeing, people are listening to feelings more. We're seeing compassion and heartfulness come back. We're seeing people say, yeah, that left brain, cerebral way of thinking and all that, it's great. We love that stuff, but there's more than that, and we're not going to let that dominate anymore. That is in many ways being so focused only in that part of our brain has gotten us into this situation in many ways. So we're seeing that change. We're seeing that change in the way people are relating to animals. You can go online and Google, and you can find all kinds of people doing animal communication. That wasn't happening in the 50s. Of course, the internet wasn't happening in the 50s. But there were, you didn't hear about people doing that sort of thing. In horse training, which is, part of my background, I'm not a horse trainer, but, horses are one of my passions. And what's happened in horse training is revolutionary. It's much more about, there's a whole movement of having respect for the animal, treating that animal as if it's a living being with wisdom. Guess what? It is. And nature has so much to teach us. And so that's the other thing, is whether this earth, whatever happens, we don't know how this is going to play itself out. And we don't know how this new dream is going to manifest. But we must always hope that there is going to be that phoenix rising from whatever ashes are left from this time of breakdown. But the breakdown is good, even though it's painful, and I'd rather not be going through it either. It's actually a really hopeful time. It does promise hope because it's an end of an era that needs to end. And in the midst of all the despair and how the rational mind would say it's impossible, we're never going to get out of this. Global warming alone is happening at such a catastrophic rate that it just looks like life is going to be impossible as we know it on this planet. But we don't know that until it happens. And so we have to let that rational mind say, yeah, you might be right. We'll say to that rational mind, yeah, you might be right. But you know what? I am such a silly fool. I'm going to just keep hoping and praying and bringing light. Thank you. And bless you all. Natakwiyasi, all my relations.